The crystal chandelier caught the morning light as Maya Washington adjusted her cleaning supplies, preparing for another day in the luxurious Pemberton mansion. She had worked here for 3 years, invisible to the wealthy family who barely acknowledged her presence. But today, something would change everything. A single photograph, a birthmark, and a truth so shocking it would shatter 2 worlds completely. What Maya discovered about her employer's wife would expose a decades-old secret that powerful people had killed to keep buried. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Washington's alarm buzzed at 5:30 sharp, the same time it had for the past 3 years. She rolled out of her narrow bed in the small apartment above the corner laundromat on Maple Street, her joints protesting after another long day scrubbing floors and polishing silver. The morning routine never varied: shower, coffee, catch the 6:15 bus to Willowbrook Heights, where million-dollar homes sat behind iron gates like fortresses protecting their secrets. The Pemberton estate sprawled across 4 acres of manicured lawn, its Georgian colonial facade gleaming white against the Tennessee sunrise. Maya had memorized every detail of this house during her 3 years of employment, from the imported Italian marble in the foyer to the hand-carved mahogany banisters that she polished weekly. She knew which floorboards creaked, which windows stuck, and exactly how Mrs. Catherine Pemberton liked her morning tea served. Catherine Pemberton was everything Maya wasn't. Blonde, elegant, draped in designer clothes that cost more than Maya earned in 6 months. She moved through the house like she owned the air itself, which Maya supposed she did. Her husband, Richard Pemberton, owned half the commercial real estate in Nashville, and Catherine served on charity boards that raised money for causes she'd never personally experienced. They lived in a bubble of privilege that Maya cleaned but could never enter. Maya pushed through the service entrance, hanging her jacket on the designated hook. The kitchen still smelled of last night's dinner party, where 20 guests had consumed more wine than Maya's family saw in a year. Crystal glasses waited in neat rows beside the industrial dishwasher, each one worth more than her weekly paycheck. She began her routine, starting with the breakfast service. Catherine always descended at exactly 8:15, expecting her Earl Grey tea, prepared with 1 sugar cube and a splash of cream, served in the Wedgwood china that Maya handled with trembling care. The morning paper would be ironed smooth, folded to the society page, placed beside fresh orchids that were replaced every 3 days, whether they needed it or not. As Maya arranged the flowers, she caught sight of her reflection in the polished silver coffee pot. Dark skin, tired eyes, hair pulled back in a practical bun. She looked nothing like the woman she served, yet something nagged at her, a familiarity she couldn't place. It had been bothering her for months, an itch in the back of her mind that she couldn't scratch. Catherine's heels clicked against the marble as she entered the breakfast room, phone pressed to her ear. "Tell them I can't possibly attend the fundraiser next week. I have the spa retreat in Aspen." Her voice carried the practiced indifference of someone who had never heard the word no. Maya served the tea silently, invisible as always. But as she turned to leave, Catherine's phone rang again, and she answered with a laugh that made Maya freeze. It was a specific laugh, musical and bright, with a little catch at the end. Maya had heard that laugh before, years ago, in another life. She forced herself to continue walking, but her hands shook as she carried the empty serving tray back to the kitchen. That laugh belonged to someone else, someone from a past Maya had tried to forget. It couldn't be possible. The woman upstairs was Catherine Elizabeth Pemberton, née Richardson, daughter of Judge Harold Richardson, graduate of Vanderbilt University, member of the country club that wouldn't have allowed Maya through the front door. But that laugh. Maya had been born Amelia Washington in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Nashville, the younger of 2 daughters. Her sister Sarah had been her whole world, 3 years older and infinitely braver. Sarah had protected Maya from their mother's boyfriends, had saved money from her after-school job to buy Maya new shoes when hers wore through, had promised they'd always be together until the night everything changed. Maya was 14 when Child Protective Services came. Their mother had overdosed again, this time nearly fatally, and the state decided the girls needed different placements. Maya went to a foster family in Memphis who treated her kindly but never quite as family. Sarah, being older, got sent to a group home in Knoxville. They'd promised to find each other when Maya turned 18, but by then Sarah had aged out of the system and disappeared. Maya had searched for years, hiring a private investigator with money she couldn't afford, checking social media obsessively, following every lead that led nowhere. Sarah Washington had vanished as completely as if she'd never existed. Now, standing in this gleaming kitchen, Maya felt that familiar laugh echoing in her memory. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to the photos she'd taken for the insurance company after last month's dinner party, documenting the valuable items in case of damage. There was Catherine, posed beside the grand piano, smiling for a guest's camera. Maya zoomed in on the image, her heart pounding. The nose was different, clearly surgical. The hair was blonde, instead of the natural brown Maya remembered. Even the eye color was wrong, green instead of brown, obviously contacts. But the bone structure underneath, the shape of the jaw, the way she held her left shoulder slightly higher than her right. Maya's phone nearly slipped from her hands. She enlarged the photo more, focusing on Catherine's collarbone. There, barely visible above the neckline of her designer dress, was a small, crescent-shaped scar. Maya's fingers went to her own neck, to the identical scar she'd gotten when they were children. When Sarah had pushed her out of the way of a falling picture frame, they'd called each other Moon Sisters because of those matching scars, two crescents that proved they belonged together. The kitchen door swung open, and Catherine walked in, still on her phone. She gestured impatiently at the coffee pot, and Maya moved to refill her cup with hands that felt disconnected from her body. As she poured, Catherine ended her call and looked directly at Maya, for perhaps the first time in 3 years. "You're shaking," Catherine said, her voice cool with mild annoyance. "Don't spill on the marble." Maya wanted to speak, wanted to say the name that had been carved into her heart for 15 years. But what would happen if she was wrong? What would happen if she was right? Catherine Pemberton lived in a world where a connection to Maya Washington would be devastating. The charity boards, the country club, the husband who owned half of Nashville's commercial district, none of that would survive the revelation that his wife had grown up in foster care as the daughter of a drug addict. But those eyes, even disguised by colored contacts, held a flicker of something Maya recognized, fear, as if Catherine sensed the danger in this moment, the possibility that her carefully constructed world might crack. Maya finished pouring the coffee and stepped back. Catherine's gaze lingered on her face for a moment longer than necessary before she turned away, dismissing Maya with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years pretending to be someone else. As Catherine left the kitchen, Maya noticed something that made her blood turn cold. On Catherine's left wrist, partially covered by her gold bracelet, was a small tattoo. 3 tiny stars in a constellation Maya knew by heart because she had the identical tattoo on her own wrist. They'd gotten them together on Sarah's 18th birthday, just weeks before the system separated them. The same laugh, the same scar, the same tattoo. Catherine Elizabeth Pemberton was Sarah Washington, and she had no idea that her invisible maid was the sister she'd lost 15 years ago. Or maybe, Maya thought as she watched Catherine disappear up the stairs, maybe she knew exactly who Maya was and had been hiding in plain sight all along. Maya's hands trembled as she polished the silver candlesticks in the dining room, her mind racing with possibilities she didn't dare voice aloud. The house felt different now, charged with secrets that seemed to whisper from every corner. She needed proof, something concrete beyond tattoos and childhood scars that could be explained away as coincidence. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 10 times, signaling Catherine's usual departure for her Wednesday morning tennis lesson at the country club. Maya waited, until she heard the purr of the Mercedes pulling out of the circular driveway before making her move. Catherine's home office occupied the southeast corner of the second floor. All cream leather furniture and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes that looked expensive but unread. Maya had cleaned this room hundreds of times, but never with purpose beyond removing dust. Today, she searched with the desperation of someone whose entire world might be built on lies. The mahogany desk drawers were locked, but Maya had learned their contents during her years of dusting around Catherine's paperwork. Insurance documents, charity correspondence, appointment schedules filled with spa treatments and social obligations. Nothing that would reveal a hidden past, but the walk-in closet held possibilities. Maya slipped inside, surrounded by designer gowns that cost more than most people's cars. Behind the evening wear, she found what she was looking for, a small cedar chest tucked beneath stacks of cashmere scarves. Inside, Maya discovered the fragments of another life, a worn teddy bear with one missing eye, the same bear Sarah had clutched during their mother's worst episodes, a class ring from Nashville Central High School, the school they'd both attended before the system separated them, and buried beneath layers of tissue paper, a photograph that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. Two young black girls stood in front of a chain-link fence, arms wrapped around each other's shoulders, grinning despite the poverty visible in every detail of their surroundings. Maya recognized her own 14-year-old face, gap-toothed and hopeful. Beside her stood Sarah, 17 and fierce, already showing signs of the beauty she would become. On the back of the photograph, in handwriting Maya would recognize anywhere, were the words, "Moon Sisters Forever, SNA Washington, 2009. Maya sank onto the closet floor, a photograph clutched against her chest. Catherine Pemberton had kept this picture for 15 years, had hidden it away like a guilty secret while building a life that erased everything about where she came from. The sister Maya had searched for relentlessly was sleeping in a bedroom down the hall, employing her to clean toilets and serve tea. The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway sent panic shooting through Maya's system. Catherine wasn't supposed to return for 2 hours, but voices in the foyer indicated she'd brought guests home unexpectedly. Maya quickly photographed the contents of the cedar chest with her phone before returning everything to its exact position. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She slipped out of the closet and grabbed her cleaning supplies, spraying furniture polish on the desk just as Catherine's voice echoed up the staircase. "Vivian, you simply must see the new Monet reproduction I had commissioned for the morning room. The artist studied in Paris, you know, footsteps on the marble stairs." Maya worked frantically, polishing surfaces she'd already cleaned, trying to look busy and invisible as Catherine entered with her guest. Vivian Ashford was old Nashville money, the kind of woman who traced her lineage back to plantation owners and spoke in honeyed tones that barely concealed her venom. She swept into the office wearing a hat that probably cost more than Maya's rent, her pale eyes taking inventory of everything worth gossiping about. "Catherine, darling, you've outdone yourself again," Vivian drawled, settling into one of the leather chairs. "Though I must say, I'm surprised you keep that girl around. The darker ones can be so unpredictable." Maya's hand froze on the picture frame she was dusting. In the reflection of the glass, she watched Catherine's face change, a flash of something that might have been pain or anger crossing her features before she smoothed it away. "Maya is perfectly adequate," Catherine replied, her voice carefully neutral. "Efficient and quiet, well, I suppose that's what matters in help," Vivian continued, apparently oblivious to Maya's presence in the way only the truly privileged could be. "Though I do worry about security. You never know what kind of background these people come from. Criminal families, drug addicts, all sorts of unsavory connections." Catherine's teacup rattled against its saucer. "I hardly think Maya poses a security threat, Vivian. Oh, I'm not saying she's dangerous, dear. Just that one can never be too careful. Harold had his security company run background checks on all our staff. You'd be amazed what they turn up. False identities, hidden pasts, family connections to all sorts of criminal elements. Maya forced herself to continue dusting, but her heart hammered against her ribs. Was Catherine's reaction born from guilt about her own hidden past, or genuine discomfort with Vivian's racism? The woman Maya remembered wouldn't have sat silently while someone spoke this way, but 15 years of privilege might have changed more than Sarah's appearance. Background checks seem rather excessive, Catherine murmured. Not at all. In fact, Harold's company could run one on your girl if you'd like. Discreet, of course. You'd have the results by tomorrow evening. The offer hung in the air like a threat. Maya watched Catherine's reflection in the picture frame, saw her grip tighten on the delicate china. One background check would expose everything: Sarah Washington's journey through the foster system, her connection to Maya, the poverty and addiction they'd escaped from. That's very generous, but unnecessary, Catherine said finally. Maya came with excellent references. Vivian shrugged, already losing interest. Suit yourself, dear. Now, about the charity auction next month. We need to discuss seating arrangements. You can't possibly put the Hendersons next to the Blackwells after that business with the country club election. Maya finished her polishing and slipped out of the room, but not before catching Catherine's eyes in the mirror's reflection. For just a moment, recognition flickered there, along with something that might have been desperation. Then Catherine looked away, returning her attention to Vivian's gossip about people Maya would never meet. In the safety of the kitchen, Maya pulled out her phone and stared at the photographs she'd taken of the cedar chest contents. The evidence was overwhelming now. The bear, the ring, the photograph, with their names written in Sarah's handwriting. But evidence of what exactly? That Catherine Pemberton was her sister? Maya had never doubted that. The real question was whether Sarah remembered having a sister at all. 15 years of living as Catherine Pemberton might have required Sarah to bury every memory of her previous life. The transformation was so complete, from foster child to society wife, that acknowledging the past could destroy everything she'd built. But those moments of recognition, the way Catherine had defended her to Vivian, suggested that somewhere beneath the designer clothes and perfect pronunciation, Sarah Washington still existed. The question was whether Maya could reach her before Catherine's carefully constructed world collapsed under the weight of its own lies. That evening, as Maya prepared to leave for the day, Catherine appeared in the kitchen. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, studying Maya's face with an intensity that made the air feel electric. "Maya," she said finally, "how long have you worked for us?" 3 years, Mrs. Pemberton. And before that? Where did you work? The questions felt loaded with meaning Maya couldn't decode. Various cleaning services around Nashville, Mom. Catherine nodded slowly, as if processing information that meant more than it should. Have we met before? You seem familiar somehow. Maya's heart stopped. This was it, the moment of truth she'd both longed for and dreaded. She could reveal everything now, could speak the name that had haunted both their lives for 15 years. Instead, she shook her head. "I don't believe so, Mrs. Pemberton. I have one of those faces." Catherine stared at her for another long moment, then turned away. "Good night, Maya." "Good night, Mrs. Pemberton." But as Maya gathered her things and headed for the service entrance, she heard Catherine whisper something so quietly it might have been imagined. "Good night." Little Moon, the childhood nickname, hit Maya like a physical blow. Sarah did remember. The question now was what either of them planned to do about it. Maya barely slept that night. The whispered words, "Good night, little moon," played on repeat in her mind. Confirmation that Sarah not only remembered her, but had been watching. Waiting, perhaps testing to see if Maya would recognize her first. But why the charade? Why continue employing her own sister as domestic help? The next morning brought answers in the most unexpected way. Maya arrived at the Pemberton estate to find police cars lining the circular driveway. Detective Marcus Thompson stood in the foyer, his notepad out, questioning Richard Pemberton while Catherine sat on the velvet settee, her hands folded perfectly in her lap. But Maya could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing toward the staircase. Just routine questions, Mr. Pemberton, Detective Thompson was saying. We're investigating a series of identity thefts targeting wealthy Nashville families. Someone's been accessing personal information, financial records, even childhood photographs. Maya's blood turned to ice. Had someone discovered Catherine's secret? Was this connected to Vivian's offer of background checks? Richard Pemberton puffed himself up with indignation. Detective, I assure you our security is impeccable. No one has access to our personal information except trusted staff, and they've all been thoroughly vetted. Of course, sir. We're just being thorough. The perpetrator seems to focus on families with charitable connections, particularly those involved in foster care advocacy. Detective Thompson's eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Maya as she pretended to dust the foyer table. They appear to be searching for specific individuals, possibly former foster children who've changed their identities. Catherine's teacup rattled against its saucer. Maya watched her sister fight to maintain composure while her entire world threatened to crumble. How terrible, Catherine managed. These poor families having their privacy violated? Indeed. The strange thing is, the thief isn't after money. They're collecting personal documents, photographs, anything that might reveal someone's past. Almost like they're trying to track down specific people. Maya's mind raced. Someone was hunting for people like Catherine, former foster children who'd reinvented themselves. But who and why? After the police left, Catherine disappeared into her office for the rest of the morning. Maya went about her duties, but every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. When she brought Catherine's lunch tray upstairs, she found her sister pacing behind her desk, phone pressed to her ear. I don't care what it costs, Harold. I need to know if anyone's been asking questions about me. Yes, about my background. Just do it. Maya set the tray down quietly, but Catherine caught sight of her and quickly ended the call. Maya, I need to speak with you privately. The words Maya had dreaded and longed for in equal measure. Catherine closed the office door and turned to face her, the pretense finally cracking. 15 years, Catherine said quietly. I've been watching you work in my house for 3 years, and you never said a word. Neither did you. Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt. I couldn't. Do you understand what my life is now? What would it mean if people knew where I came from? You mean that your sister scrubs your floors? Catherine flinched. That's not. I didn't know you were looking for work when Richard's previous housekeeper quit. The agency sent you, and when I saw your name on the application, I thought it was a coincidence. Sarah Washington and Maya Washington aren't uncommon names, but you knew it was me, not immediately. But your laugh, the way you organize things, that little scar on your hand from when you fell off Mrs. Rodriguez's fence. Catherine sank into her chair. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that it couldn't possibly be you. Why didn't you say anything? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Because I was terrified you'd want your sister back. And Catherine Pemberton can't have a sister who grew up in foster care. The charity boards, Richard's business connections, our social circle. It would destroy everything I've built. The admission hung between them, like a chasm. Maya felt 15 years of searching, of wondering, of hoping crystallize into hurt so pure it took her breath away. So you decided to keep me as your employee instead. I thought it was better than losing you again. At least this way you were safe, you had steady work. I could make sure you were taken care of without anyone asking questions. Taken care of? Maya's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. Sarah, I've been looking for you for 15 years. I hired private investigators. I searched every database. I never stopped hoping. And you've been here the whole time, letting me believe you were dead or worse. I couldn't contact you. Don't you understand? The moment I married Richard, the moment I became Catherine Pemberton, Sarah Washington had to die, completely. Any connection to my past would have exposed everything. Everything like what? That you grew up poor? That our mother was an addict? That you came from nothing? Catherine's composure finally shattered. Yes, exactly that. Do you think Richard would have married me if he'd known? Do you think his family would have accepted me? Do you think I could serve on the board of the Children's Foundation if they knew I was once one of those children? The irony wasn't lost on Maya. Her sister sat on the board of an organization dedicated to helping foster children while hiding the fact that she'd been one herself. "You're helping kids like we were," Maya said slowly. "I'm helping them from a position of power and influence. As Catherine Pemberton, I can raise millions for foster care programs. As Sarah Washington, I was just another statistic." Before Maya could respond, Catherine's phone buzzed with a text message. As she read it, all color drained from her face. "What is it?" Catherine held up the phone with shaking hands. The message was from an unknown number. "We know who you really are. Sarah, meet us tonight at Riverside Park, 11 p.m. Or your husband gets a very interesting package of documents tomorrow." "Who knows?" Maya whispered. "I don't know, but someone's been investigating me. The detective mentioned identity theft, targeting people like me, former foster kids who changed their lives. Someone's hunting us." Maya grabbed her sister's hands. "Then we face it together." "No, absolutely not. If this gets out, I'll lose everything, but you'll just be collateral damage. I won't let you get hurt because of my choices. Sarah, I lost you once. I'm not losing you again. It's Catherine. It has to be Catherine." But even as she said it, Catherine's grip tightened on Maya's hands. "What if they want money? What if they're planning to blackmail me? Then we find out what they want and figure out how to stop them." Catherine stared at her sister's determined face. "You don't understand the stakes. If Richard learns the truth, if his family finds out, if the charity boards discover I've been lying about my background, I'll lose everything. The house, the money, the influence, the life I've built. But you'll have your sister back." The simple words cut through years of careful construction, of deliberate distance, of chosen isolation. Catherine, Sarah, looked at Maya and saw not the maid who cleaned her house, but the little girl who'd shared her bed during their mother's worst nights, who'd split her school lunch when money was tight, who'd promised they'd always be family. "I've missed you so much," Sarah whispered, and for the first time in 15 years, she sounded like the sister Maya remembered. "Then let's figure out who's threatening us and stop them before they destroy everything you've worked for." Sarah wiped her eyes, smearing her perfect makeup. "You said us. We're moon sisters, remember? That means we protect each other." As the sun set over Nashville, the sisters began planning for a confrontation that would determine whether Sarah's carefully constructed life could survive contact with her authentic past. Neither of them realized they were walking into a trap that had been 15 years in the making. Riverside Park, after dark, was a different world from the manicured spaces where Catherine normally spent her time. Ancient oak trees cast twisted shadows across empty playgrounds, and the Cumberland River whispered secrets to the night. Maya crouched behind a maintenance shed, watching her sister pace nervously near the designated meeting spot. Catherine had insisted on coming alone, but Maya refused to let her face this threat without backup. They'd agreed Maya would stay hidden unless things went wrong, though neither was entirely sure what wrong might look like. At exactly 11 p.m., a figure emerged from the tree line. Maya's breath caught as she recognized the woman approaching Catherine. It was Janet Morrison, the director of the Children's Foundation, the very charity board where Catherine served. "Hello, Sarah," Janet said, her voice carrying across the empty park. Catherine straightened, slipping back into her polished persona. "I'm afraid you have me confused with someone else. My name is Catherine Pemberton." Janet laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "Oh, I know exactly who you are. Sarah Elizabeth Washington, born March 15th, 1991, daughter of Rebecca Washington, ward of the state from age 17 until you aged out at 18. Shall I continue? What do you want?" Catherine's composure was cracking. "What I've always wanted, justice." Janet pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "Do you know how long I've been looking for you?" 15 years, Sarah. 15 years since you disappeared and left your sister behind." Maya's blood turned to ice. "This woman knew about her too." "I don't know what you're talking about," Catherine said, but her voice wavered. "Your sister Maya has been searching for you desperately, hiring private investigators she couldn't afford, checking missing persons databases, never giving up hope that her beloved Sarah was still alive somewhere. Janet's voice dripped with false sympathy. Meanwhile, you've been living in luxury, married to one of Nashville's wealthiest men, serving on boards that help children like you once were. The irony is delicious. How do you know about Maya? Because, my dear Sarah, I've been watching both of you for years. You see, I have a very personal interest in your story. Janet stepped closer, and in the moonlight, Maya could see her face more clearly. The woman was older than Catherine, maybe mid-40s, with graying brown hair and sharp features that seemed familiar somehow. 23 years ago, I was a caseworker for Davidson County Child Services, Janet continued. I was fresh out of college, idealistic, determined to save every child who crossed my desk. I had particular interest in a case involving two sisters whose mother was addicted to heroin. Catherine went very still. That's impossible. Our caseworker was a man. David something? David Brennan, yes. He was my supervisor. But I was the one who did the home visits, who documented the conditions, who made the recommendations about your placement. Janet's smile was bitter. I was the one who decided you and Maya should be separated. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Maya pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. You, Catherine whispered. You're the one who tore us apart. I thought I was doing what was best. You were 17, almost aged out anyway. Maya was younger, more adoptable. I thought separating you would give her a better chance at finding a permanent family, while allowing you to focus on your own transition to adulthood. We begged you to keep us together. We promised we'd be good, we'd help each other, we wouldn't be in any trouble. And look how well my decision worked out, Janet said with mock cheerfulness. Maya bounced between foster homes for 4 years, never adopted, aged out of the system with no family and no support. Meanwhile, you disappeared completely. Do you know what that did to my career? To my reputation? The pieces began falling into place for Maya. This wasn't about justice, it was about revenge. The other cases, Catherine said slowly. The detective mentioned other identity thefts. You're hunting down all the kids whose lives you ruined. I prefer to think of it as conducting follow-up studies. What happens to foster children when the system fails them? Some, like your sister, struggle in poverty, working menial jobs, never escaping the cycle. Others, like you, manage to completely reinvent themselves, abandoning everything and everyone from their past. Janet opened the folder and pulled out photographs. Even from her hiding spot, Maya could see they were surveillance shots, Catherine at charity events, Maya cleaning houses, both sisters going about their separate lives. I've been documenting your story for my book, Janet continued. A memoir about my years in social work, the cases that haunted me, the children I failed. Your story will be the centerpiece. The sisters I separated, one who rose to prominence while the other remained invisible. You can't publish that, Catherine said desperately. It would destroy my life. That's the point, Sarah. I want the world to see what happens when children escape their designated place. I want your husband to know he married a lie. I want your precious charity boards to see the hypocrisy of having a former foster child pretend to care about current ones while hiding her own past. Maya couldn't stay hidden any longer. She stepped out from behind the shed, and both women turned toward her. You want to know what happens to foster children? Maya called out, walking toward them. I'll tell you. Janet's eyes widened with recognition and something that might have been satisfaction. The famous Maya Washington. Right on time. You remember me, Maya said, stopping beside Catherine. Of course I remember you. The little girl who cried every night for her sister, who ran away from 3 different foster homes trying to find Sarah, who became my greatest professional failure. No, Maya said firmly. Your greatest failure was thinking we were better apart than together, Janet laughed. And yet here you are, working as your sister's maid while she lives in a mansion. Tell me, Maya, how does it feel to know she chose wealth over family? That she's been watching you struggle while she lived in luxury? Maya looked at Catherine, seeing the fear and shame in her sister's eyes. It feels like she was scared. like she thought she had to choose between survival and love. Like she was still the 17-year-old girl you traumatized who thought she had to protect everyone by staying away. How touching, Janet sneered. But sentiment won't stop my book from being published. Your story is too perfect, too illustrative of everything wrong with the foster care system. What do you want? Catherine asked. Money? I can pay you. I don't want your money, Sarah. I want your truth. I want you to publicly acknowledge who you are, where you came from, and how you abandoned your sister. I want you to tell the world that Catherine Pemberton is a fraud. And if I refuse, Janet smiled, then I send this entire file to your husband, your charity boards, and the Nashville media. I imagine the scandal will be quite entertaining. The sisters stood together in the darkness, facing the woman who had shaped their lives with a single decision 23 years ago. Maya reached for Catherine's hand, finding it cold and trembling. You have 24 hours to decide, Janet said, tucking the folder under her arm. Public confession or public humiliation. Either way, the truth comes out. As Janet disappeared back into the darkness, the sisters remained standing by the river, holding hands for the first time in 15 years while their world collapsed around them. I'm so sorry, Catherine whispered, for everything. For not finding you, for keeping you at a distance, for letting you work as my employee when you should have been my family. We'll figure this out, Maya said, though she had no idea how. We're together now. That has to count for something. But as they walked back toward Catherine's car, both sisters knew that Janet Morrison held all the cards. The question now was whether their reunion had come. Too late to save either of their lives from the consequences of choices made by a vindictive woman seeking to settle old scores. The sisters sat in Catherine's Mercedes in the parking lot of an all-night diner, the engine running, but neither making a move to leave. 24 hours felt like both an eternity and no time at all to figure out how to salvage a life built on carefully constructed lies. We need to find something for her, Maya said, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since leaving the park. Janet Morrison didn't become vindictive overnight. There has to be something in her past we can use. Catherine stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, seeing Sarah Washington staring back. You're talking about blackmail. I'm talking about survival. She's planning to destroy your life for a book deal. That's not justice. That's exploitation. Maybe I deserve it, Catherine whispered. Maybe this is karma for abandoning you, for building a life on lies, for pretending you didn't exist. Maya turned in her seat to face her sister fully. Sarah Elizabeth Washington, listen to me. You were 17 years old when they separated us. 17. You were a child making impossible choices in an impossible situation. Janet Morrison was the adult with the power, and she failed us both. Catherine's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Working late again? Missing you at home? The casual intimacy of it made her stomach twist. In 18 hours, her marriage might be over. I have to tell him, Catherine said suddenly. Richard? I have to tell him before Janet does. Are you sure that's wise? What if he leaves me? What if he's disgusted by who I really am? Catherine's laugh was bitter. At least it'll be my choice instead of hers. Maya studied her sister's profile, seeing the resolve building beneath the fear. Then I'm coming with you. Maya, no. This is my mess to clean up, our mess. We're in this together now, remember? They drove through Nashville's empty streets toward Willowbrook Heights, but instead of going straight to the mansion, Catherine made an unexpected turn toward downtown. Where are we going? The public library. They have digital archives going back decades. If Janet Morrison has skeletons in her closet, that's where we'll find them. The library's after-hours access required Catherine's charity board credentials, an irony that wasn't lost on either sister. They settled at computer terminals in the research section, searching through newspaper archives, court records, and professional licensing databases. Look at this, Maya said after an hour of searching. She'd found a Nashville Scene article from 2003 titled Child Services Under Fire, Caseworker Accused of Inappropriate Relationships. Catherine read over her shoulder. Janet Morrison, 32, a caseworker with Davidson County Child Services, has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation into allegations that she maintained inappropriate contact with former clients after they aged out of the system. Keep reading, Maya urged. The allegations, brought forward by 3 former foster children now in their early 20s, claim Morrison tracked their whereabouts, contacted their employers, and attempted to insert herself into their personal lives under the guise of conducting follow-up welfare checks. Catherine sat back in her chair. She's been stalking former clients for 20 years. There's more. Maya had found another article from 2004. Morrison was fired from Child Services following an internal investigation. The department sealed the records, but sources confirm she violated professional boundaries with multiple former cases. A pattern was emerging. Janet Morrison hadn't moved on from her social work career. She'd become obsessed with the children she'd failed, tracking them down years later to document their struggles or successes for her own purposes. She probably has files on dozens of former foster kids, Catherine realized. We weren't her first victims, and we won't be her last. Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard, searching for more recent information. Here, she's been writing articles for social work journals about longitudinal outcomes for system-involved youth. She's been using real cases without consent. That's completely unethical. Probably illegal, too. And look at this. Maya had found Janet's social media profiles. She's been posting about her upcoming book for months, a groundbreaking memoir that will expose the dark truths about America's foster care system. She's already got a publisher interested. Catherine studied the posts, seeing photos of Janet at writing conferences, posing with her manuscript, networking with editors. She's not just writing about us, she's built her entire comeback career on exploiting the kids she failed. The realization shifted something fundamental between the sisters. This wasn't about Janet's guilt over past mistakes. This was about a predator who had found a way to continue victimizing the children she was supposed to protect. We need to contact the other victims, Maya said. If she's been doing this for 20 years, there have to be others who want her stopped. They spent the next 3 hours tracking down names from the archived articles, cross-referencing them with current social media profiles and public records. By dawn, they had a list of 7 former foster children who had been contacted by Janet Morrison in recent years. Catherine's phone rang as the sun rose over Nashville. Richard's name appeared on the screen. "Where are you?" His voice carried worry rather than anger. "I came home and you weren't here. Maya said you had a family emergency." Catherine looked at her sister, who nodded encouragingly. "Richard, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you meet me at the house?" "Of course. Are you all right? You sound strange." "I will be, Richard. I love you. Whatever happens next, I need you to know that." After hanging up, Catherine turned to Maya. "If this goes badly, if he can't handle the truth about who I am, what will you do?" "What do you mean?" "Will you stay? Work for whoever Richard marries next? Or will you disappear again?" Maya grabbed her sister's hands. "Sarah, I'm not going anywhere. Rich or poor, married or divorced, Catherine Pemberton or Sarah Washington, you're my sister. We lost 15 years, but we're not losing any more time." They drove back to the mansion as Nashville woke up around them. Richard's BMW was already in the driveway, and through the kitchen window they could see him making coffee, probably wondering why his wife had been out all night. "Are you ready for this?" Maya asked as they sat in the car. Catherine took a deep breath, transforming back into the poised woman who had commanded charity board meetings and hosted political fundraisers. But now Maya could see the scared 17-year-old underneath, the girl who had lost everything and rebuilt herself from nothing. "No," Catherine admitted, "but I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of hiding from who I am." They walked through the front door together, not employer and employee, but sisters facing an uncertain future. Richard looked up from his coffee, his expression shifting from relief to confusion as he took in their obvious exhaustion and Maya's presence. Catherine? What's going on? Why is Maya here so early? Catherine looked at her husband, the man who had given her a life she'd never dreamed possible, and made the choice that would determine everything that came next. Richard, I need to tell you about my sister Sarah. The confusion on Richard's face deepened. Your sister? You don't have a sister. You told me you had no family. Catherine reached for Maya's hand, drawing strength from the connection she'd denied for 3 years. I lied about everything. My name isn't Catherine Elizabeth Richardson. I'm Sarah Washington, and this is my sister Maya, and there's someone trying to destroy our lives because of who we used to be. As the truth finally spilled out in their beautiful kitchen, with morning sunlight streaming through windows, Maya had cleaned 1,000 times. Both sisters knew they were either about to lose everything or finally get their lives back. The next few hours would determine which. Richard Pemberton set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision, his face cycling through disbelief, hurt, and something Maya couldn't quite identify. The silence stretched until it became almost unbearable. 23 years, he said finally. We've been married for 5 years, together for 7, and everything you told me about yourself was a lie. Not everything, Catherine said desperately. My feelings for you, our life together, the person I became with you, that was all real. The person you became. Richard's voice was flat. Catherine Elizabeth Richardson, daughter of Judge Harold Richardson, graduate of Vanderbilt University. That person doesn't exist. She does exist. I made her exist. I became her because I loved you, because I wanted to be worthy of the life you offered me. Richard stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the garden where he'd proposed 3 years earlier. Do you have any idea what this means? My family, my business associates, the foundation boards we serve on together. Everything we've built is based on lies. Maya watched her sister's face crumble, seeing the girl who had always believed she wasn't worthy of love or stability. But before Catherine could speak, Maya stepped forward. Mr. Pemberton, with respect, you're wrong. Richard turned to her, clearly having forgotten she was in the room. I beg your pardon? Everything you've built together is based on who Sarah really is, not the fake background she created. She raised millions for foster care programs because she understands those children's pain. She fights for social justice because she's lived injustice. She created Catherine Pemberton because she thought Sarah Washington wasn't good enough for you. But Sarah was always the better person. Maya, don't, Catherine whispered. No, I'm going to say this. Maya faced Richard directly. Your wife spent 15 years searching for a way back to me while building a life that could help other kids like us. She's not a fraud. She's a survivor who convinced herself she had to choose between authenticity and acceptance. Richard stared at Maya, then at Catherine. You've been employing your own sister as domestic help. I was protecting her, Catherine said weakly. From what? From you. From your world. From the possibility that if you knew the truth, you'd leave and I'd lose both of you again. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Richard sank back into his chair, running his hands through his hair. My God, Catherine, Sarah, whoever you are, did you really think so little of me? That I'd abandon you because of where you came from? Your mother asked for my family tree before we got engaged, Catherine said quietly. She wanted to make sure I came from appropriate stock. Your father insisted on a background check. What do you think they would have said if they'd learned I was a foster kid whose mother died of an overdose? Richard was quiet for a long moment. They would have been wrong. Before anyone could respond, Catherine's phone rang. Janet Morrison's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, Maya said. Put it on speaker. Catherine hesitated, then accepted the call. Hello, Janet. Good morning, Sarah. I trust you've made your decision. The press conference I've arranged for this afternoon will be much more pleasant if you're cooperating voluntarily. Press conference, Richard mouthed. Maya stepped closer to the phone. Hello, Janet. This is Maya Washington. Ah, the devoted sister. How does it feel to finally have a reunion? I imagine it's quite touching. Actually, it is. Which is why we're calling to thank you. Janet's confident tone faltered slightly. Thank me for helping us realize that secrets only have power when you're ashamed of them, Maya continued. We're not ashamed anymore. Catherine looked at her sister with growing understanding. That's right. We've decided to tell our story ourselves. Your story. About the caseworker who separated sisters and then spent 20 years stalking her former clients, Catherine said, finding her voice. About the woman who was fired from child services for violating professional boundaries. About Janet Morrison's pattern of exploiting the children she failed. The silence on Janet's end was telling. We found the others, Janet, Maya added. 7 former foster kids you've contacted over the years. They're very interested in sharing their experiences with your follow-up research. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Janet said. But her voice had lost its earlier confidence. Actually, we do. We're dealing with a predator who found a way to continue victimizing vulnerable people by disguising it as social work research. The Tennessee Board of Licensed Clinical Social Workers will be very interested in your unauthorized use of confidential case information. My book will still be published. Your secret will still come out. Richard suddenly leaned toward the phone. This is Richard Pemberton. Ms. Morrison, my legal team will be contacting you within the hour regarding libel, harassment, and potential criminal stalking charges. I suggest you consult an attorney. Who is that? That's my husband, Catherine said, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she smiled. The man who married Sarah Washington, not Catherine Pemberton. Though he's only just learning that now. Janet hung up without another word. Richard stood up, pulling Catherine into his arms. Sarah Washington. I like the sound of that better anyway. Sarah Pemberton has a nice ring to it. Catherine broke down completely then. 15 years of fear and guilt, pouring out in tears she'd held back for too long. Richard held her while Maya watched, seeing her sister finally allowing herself to be vulnerable with the man she loved. What happens now? Catherine asked when she could speak again. Now we call our attorney, file harassment charges, and make sure Janet Morrison can't hurt anyone else, Richard said practically. Then we plan a proper wedding, because I want to marry you again, knowing exactly who you are, and your family. Your business associates? Richard shrugged. The ones who matter will understand. The ones who don't weren't worth having anyway. Maya cleared her throat. What about me? I don't exactly fit into your world either. Richard and Catherine looked at each other, then at Maya. Your family, Richard said simply. We'll figure out the details, but you're not cleaning anyone's house anymore unless you want to. Catherine laughed through her tears. Maya, you have a business degree you never got to use because you were too busy looking for me. Maybe it's time you put it to work helping other foster kids navigate the system. The Sarah and Maya Foundation, Richard suggested. We'll fund it properly. No more hiding who you are or where you came from. 6 months later, Maya stood at the podium of the Nashville Convention Center, addressing 200 social workers, foster families, and former foster children at the inaugural conference of the Sarah and Maya Foundation. In the front row sat her sister, now legally Sarah Pemberton again, holding hands with Richard. My sister and I were separated by a system that thought it knew what was best for us, Maya began. We lost 15 years believing we had to choose between authenticity and acceptance, between survival and love. But we've learned that the most powerful thing you can do is tell your truth, even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. In the audience, Detective Thompson sat next to the state attorney who had prosecuted Janet Morrison for stalking and harassment. Janet's book would never be published, and her victims had found their voices at last. The foster care system failed us in many ways, Maya continued, but it also taught us resilience, empathy, and the value of chosen family. Today, we're here to make sure no other siblings are separated by fear, shame, or the belief that they have to abandon their past to claim their future. Sarah stood up and began applauding, followed by Richard, then the entire audience. The sisters locked eyes across the room, seeing not the maid and the wealthy wife, not the lost and the found, but 2 women who had survived everything thrown at them and emerged stronger, After the conference, they drove through Nashville toward the small apartment where Maya had grown up. They were planning to turn it into a resource center for aging-out foster youth, a place where kids like they had been could find support without judgment. "Do you ever regret it?" Maya asked as they pulled up to the familiar building. "Giving up the perfect life Catherine Pemberton had?" Sarah smiled, wedding ring catching the late afternoon sun. Catherine Pemberton was afraid of everything. Sarah Pemberton has her sister back, a husband who loves her for who she really is, and work that matters. There's no contest. They walked up the stairs to the apartment where two little girls had once promised they'd always be family, no matter what. Now, 30 years later, they were keeping that promise at last. The Moon sisters were finally home. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.